Hello YouTube, Stefan here. So I've built a little bit and I've created something fancy and I'd like to share with you what it is and how it works. So let's get started. Okay, so these three things are the main components of what I've built, and these are what I will show you first and explain what they do. And I start with the first one, and I start with demonstrating this one first because it's a great introduction to the concepts. To get started, I will have to set up a scoreboard value, scoreboard player set, some fake player named O, in an objective named O to 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1234. And if I press a button on this thing, this will basically, as a general component, this top part will just execute some fill commands to activate all these command blocks in order. So these few command blocks print this 1, 2, 3, 4 in a special way. You see, I get 12.34. So basically 1234 stands for the number with 2 decimals, where the last two digits of the original numbers are the 2 decimals. So what can we do with that? Of course we can get our self-pointed numbers in the chat, but this video is about how to calculate with these kind of numbers in different ways. Okay, I calculate with scoreboard values, at least this is the goal. What does Minecraft offer for this? Mojang added a few things in the last few snapshots to enable a lot of different ways to interact with the scoreboard values, and I will shortly mention them all here. We have the scoreboard command and with the subcommand players, and you can set some scoreboard value for a player, and you can add some constant number to a player's scoreboard value or remove, so subtract a specific value. Or, and this is the most interesting part, use the scoreboard operations, and with these you can basically use two different scoreboard values and calculate them together in 5 different ways. So the syntax is, you have like the name of the target, so this is firstly the first operand, and also it is the where the result gets stored in an objective, and then comes the operation, for example plus, and then the second operand in the same objective or another objective, I don't know. And what this will do is it will add this score to this score and store the result in this score. So the 5 different modes, the 5 different operations are addition, add the 2 values, subtraction, and basically subtract the second from the first, multiplication, multiply the 2 together, division, integer division, divide the first by the second value and truncate towards 0, and you get modulo, which is the rest of the integer division basically. So if you divide A by B with the integer division, you basically truncate it towards 0, or in other words, you can have done a division with the rest. So if you know what division with rest is, modulo is the rest of the division. If you know what modulo is, you're fine. Also you could say that if you want to revert the division by, say, multiplying the whole thing with B again, you would not have you would not have this equal to a. This would not be 2 if there was some truncation that changed the result. But if you add on the modulo, then this will be equal to a, because the modulo is what you would have lost. The last and not as known way to do interesting stuff with scoreboards is to use the execute command, and you can have yourself one entity with one specific score, and you can have these entity selectors, and you can put their score, some objective name, equals, so this means it is smaller than or equal to what you put there, or underscore min equals, that means it should be greater than or equal, and you can combine these two, that means it should be basically completely equal to the value that you put in both cases, or smaller than one value and bigger than another. So with these you can basically set a condition based on the scoreboard under which something will be executed or will not if the condition doesn't hold. And if you put some scoreboard operation or something similar into the executed command, you can change the scoreboard, you can do some calculations only under certain conditions. And this is really essential and really helpful to do a lot of stuff. And for me it was really helpful to do a lot of stuff. Now, how to calculate with these things? Addition and subtraction is actually pretty straightforward. If you have basically, for example, the number 12.34 plus the number 56.78, 56.78, you will get a result, in this case 69.12, and you will easily notice that this is the same as if you have just added the two numbers that represent the pointed values. So it's just a single scoreboard addition, and the same holds for subtraction. So the subtraction of these two numbers would be minus 4,444, and for the numbers with the point it's the same. So you can basically directly use that. Multiplication, then, as you can see here, this is for the multiplication. You use a few more commands to the number of command blocks. I can say the showing thing, the result printing thing, used 15 command blocks. These here, for example, are 11, 22, 23 command blocks for the multiplication. And for the division that I will explain next, I used actually 6, 5 by 3, 15, 30, 2, 4, 34 command blocks. But to the multiplication, the problem is if you want to multiply, for example, the same numbers again, just any numbers, and you will want to get the result 700.6652 if you want to have the accurate result. And this is what will happen if you just multiply the numbers that represent these pointed numbers. You will get a pretty big number. The problem is this would be the representation for 70,066.52. Basically we would want to have the point here. As we only have 2 digits after that, we would also like to drop these last 2 digits. So this could be easily accomplished by just multiplying these together and dividing by 100. But I wanted to do it better, and the only reason why these are so many command blocks is, and I will not explain how I did it in detail, but the only reason these are so many command blocks is that I implemented some pretty some precise rounding. So this would be rounded to 700.67 because it's closer to this number than to 700.66. And I will demonstrate this in action later. Okay, why do I always say I won't explain things? I will explain how the rounding works. So you have this big number, and simply if you modulo this by 100, you will get these last two digits. There are some corrections for negative numbers, and these I will really skip, but basically you can tell from this number for positive numbers, if it's bigger than 50, you have to round up, otherwise you have to round down, and if it's exactly tied, then I used some well, you would basically have to decide between one of the two, and either are equally well suited, but I just used the method of rounding to the even number next of the two numbers you have to choose from. So the one of which the last digit is even. Now to division. Well, if we start with the same approach, this time I will use a slightly different number for the second, because it should be a little bit smaller. If we divide these two numbers, we should get something like 2.17636 and so on. So really many digits, and we could truncate this then, and we would want to get 2.18 in this case. Well, what happens if we just divide the two representations? We would get 2 because of integer division. The problem is any digits here would be lost. So if we do the trick and multiply this by 100 before we divide, we would get 2.17. This is the result with the remaining digits dropped. As I can't predict how this will go on after that, even if I get a 5 as the next digit, in case I would just take another digit and look at the result here, I could not say after how many zeros would come possibly something else, and I would not know if there was a tie or not in certain cases. Where basically how I do it is I just divide like this and get some result that is truncated, and if I then take basically 217.5 times the divisor, so 567, basically I do it by just leaving out the 0.5, I will get a result, and this will be, well, this I have to calculate, wait a minute, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 2, 5. If I compare this to well, basically the original number with 3 added zeros, I will easily basically see if this is smaller or greater than this number, basically by subtracting them and looking if the result is smaller or greater than 0. And this way I know if the truncation, well, if the original number was below 217.5, the result was below 217.5 or above 217.5, and I can round in the right way. And if it's 0, I know I have a tie, and I can, what I like to do, just round to the number with the even digit. In this case I would know this is smaller, I have to round up, I get to 218, and this stands for 2.18, which is the result. In addition to this explanation, I will provide a Word download where you can take a look at these commands, and now I will turn around and I will start showing you how to use this prototype calculator I created using these concepts. So this thing is set up around 3 scores. One of them is called O for output, and 2 of them are called I and J for 2 inputs, where I is the first input and J is the second input. Which this panel allows you to do is, first of all, on every step output the current value of the O objective, and this number panel allows you to modify the O, and this here, these 4 buttons allow you to calculate, where you always have Y as the first operand and J of the second operand and O for the output of the operation. So if I press plus, I would store the result of I plus J into O without changing either I or J. For minus it would be I minus J. For the star it would be multiplication. For the slash division, I divided by J would be stored in O. And these buttons are for copying between I and O. This button copies the current contents of O in I, and this copies the current contents of I into O, and this does the same thing with, it copies O into J and it copies J into O. Okay, to the input. These buttons stand for numbers laid out like this sign suggests: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You should not spam these buttons, by the way. This means you should only press the next button after the first one has deactivated. So I can just press these buttons for demonstration purposes, and I will get feedback in this chat. If I press 1, I will get 0.01. If I press 2, then I will get 0.12, 3, 4, 5. It's basically shifting in the numbers from the right. So if you want to input a specific number, well, by the way, you can clear the number back to 0 using this button. You can, for example, for writing 12.5, you can press 1, 2 for 12, and then 5, 0 for the 0.50. If you want to enter a full number like 10, you can press 1, and then you have to press 0 a few times to get to 10.00. If you press the wrong button, you can also use this button to basically to remove the last digit. This means it will just get divided by 10 and you will lose the last digit, and then you can go on and replace it with something else. At last, this button down here changes the sign of all of the number, but this prototype implementation only supports to use this as an input while positive numbers are in there, because of the way it is set up. For demonstration, if I have a number like 20 or like -20, and if I then would try to make this into the number -200.01, I would get -199.99 instead, because the system added the 0.01, but for the negative number I would have to subtract it. So keep in mind, only use positive numbers to edit, and if you ever have to edit a negative number, first, like, you want to change the last digit of -3.05, you just have to press the negation button to turn it back positive, then you can change your last digit, and then you can turn it back negative. Okay? I guess these 4 buttons I already explained what they do, and so using these 4 buttons also, and this is basically all the buttons, and now I will do a little demonstration. So let's do all the example calculations we began with in the explanation. First of all, I clear the input, and then I enter the first number, 1230, whatever, 12.34 I mean, and then I store it into I with this button. And then I clear and get 56.78 and store it into J. You can see now in I is 12.34 and in J is the number 56.78. And now if I press the plus, I will get the result 69.12, just what we had. I can just let them sit in there because I and J have not changed, they are still the same numbers. I could also, you see this output is now in O. You can see that if I press any button here, I will edit the output in the O. I can move on to the subtraction. We had this, that was minus 44.44. You see here. The multiplication, also what we had with the white rounding, and the division of, well, I dropped there a digit. I didn't use 56.78 as the second operand, but 5.67. Just remove the last digit, store it back into J, and use the division, and I get 2.18. Negative numbers of course work too. If I will divide 12.34 not by 5.67 but by minus 5.67, store it here, and I will get minus 2.18, for example. So yeah, this was basically it. A quick word tour for what I present you, what I give you in the Word download. These are the components that calculate, and these components are really activated by these buttons, so they aren't just here for demonstration purposes. They belong to the system with set block. They get activated, and yeah, this component shows the result. This component does the multiplication, this does the division, and these are the trivial small implementation for just addition and subtraction. Basically what they do is copy values around so that they don't change I and J but only put the result into O. This is an ordinary minecart, but I copied its UUID and put it into all the command blocks so that they can put things into his score and then use execute to do the conditionals. So I called him the executor. And this is the panel with a lot of command blocks back here, but basically all they do is well, these add a few numbers on there for different digits, and they divide by 10 or multiply with 10, and otherwise they just do some set block for these components or some set block for other components to basically use the show on every step in between and use other operations. I hope you liked this video, and thank you really much for watching. Goodbye.